1. Author and era. Confucius Kong-Q, 551 to 479 BCE, was born in the small state of Lu, modern Shandong, to an impoverished noble family during the late Zhou dynasty's progressive disintegration. The ritual and moral order that had held Chinese civilization together, the Zhou Li, the elaborate system of rites, music, and social obligations, was visibly crumbling as feudal lords competed for power and traditional hierarchies fractured. Confucius diagnosed this as a crisis of meaning and character, not merely of politics. He spent his career seeking a ruler who would implement his vision of governance through virtue, di, rather than force, and largely failed politically. His personal failure was philosophically productive. Driven from one state to another for 13 years, he refined his teaching through the experience of a world that would not cooperate with his ideals. He returned to Lu in old age to teach, and it was his disciples' community that preserved and transmitted his thought. 2. The book's genesis. The Lu Analects, Selected Sayings, was compiled by Confucius's disciples and their students in the generations after his death, gathering remembered conversations, exchanges, and pronouncements. It is not a systematic treatise, but a portrait, fragmentary, often cryptic, occasionally self-contradicting, of a teacher whose meaning was inseparable from his personality and practice. The Analects was compiled precisely because Confucius's learning was embodied rather than written. It lived in the quality of his relationships, his musical sensibility, his attention to ritual correctness in every context. Without this text, the philosophical tradition that has shaped East Asian civilization more deeply than any other governing family structures, political institutions, educational systems, and personal ideals across China, Japan, Korea, and Vietnam for 2.5 millennia would have no primary document. 3. Main themes. Ren as the supreme virtue. What is the core of human excellence? Ren, variously translated as benevolence, humaneness, or goodness, is the animating virtue of the Junzi, exemplary person. It cannot be defined simply. Confucius gives different answers in different contexts, but its root image is person plus two. It is essentially relational, realized in the quality of one's relations with others. The rectification of names. Can a disordered society be reformed? Confucius's surprising answer is that the first step is linguistic and conceptual. Rulers must rule. Fathers must father, ministers must minister, not in the sense of conforming to titles, but of genuinely embodying what those roles require. Social disorder begins in the gap between name and reality. Learning and self-cultivation as lifelong practice. Is moral development ever complete? The Analects opens with Confucius's reflection on joy in learning and closes with his self-description as a person who transmits but does not innovate. Cultivation, shu, is continuous. The Junzi is not a finished product, but a person in motion. Ritual propriety as the form of virtue. How does virtue become visible and teachable? Li, ritual propriety, including the full range of social ceremonies, music, and behavioral norms, is not mere formalism, but the cultural medium through which virtue is cultivated, expressed, and transmitted. Without Li, Ren remains private and uncommunicable. 4. Summary. The Analects begins mid-conversation. Is it not pleasant to learn with a constant perseverance and application? Is it not delightful to have friends coming from distant quarters? These are not rhetorical questions, but the texture of a philosophical life Confucius is modeling. The text proceeds through dialogues, often brief, sometimes a single exchange between Confucius and specific disciples. The ardent Zilu, the thoughtful Yan Hui, Confucius's beloved, who died young, the practical Zigong. Each conversation is contextually specific. The same question receives different answers depending on who is asking. This is not inconsistency, but pedagogical precision. Virtue cannot be transmitted as a doctrine, but only as an appropriate response to the person in front of you. The central teaching accumulates through these encounters. The Junzi, exemplary person, often inadequately translated gentleman, is defined by Ren, expressed through Li, governed by Yi, righteousness, and oriented by Zhi, wisdom. These four virtues are not separate faculties, but aspects of a single character cultivated through decades of study, ritual practice, and self-examination. The political dimension is integral. The Junzi in office governs by moral example, transforming subjects through the quality of their own character rather than through laws and punishments. Whether this is politically sufficient, Confucius's own career suggests it may not be, is a question the text leaves open. 5. Deep dive analysis. The concept of Ren, often rendered benevolence or humaneness, is the Analect's philosophical heart, and it resists definition precisely because Confucius gives different answers in different contexts. When Fan Qi asks about Ren, Confucius says, "Love others." When Yan Hui asks, he is given a more demanding answer, "Restrain the self and return to Li." When Zhong Gong asks, he is told, "Never do to others what you would not like done to yourself." A formulation remarkably close to the Golden Rule. The variation is not evasion, but philosophical precision. Ren is not a property that can be possessed in isolation. It is a relational achievement, the quality of genuine care, attentiveness, and responsiveness that characterizes the best human relationships. It is always actualized in context. Ren between parent and child looks different from Ren between ruler and minister, not because there are different standards, but because different relationships have different structures and demands. The most powerful implication is that ethics is irreducibly relational and contextual. There is no Ren in the abstract. There is only the quality of particular encounters and the cultivation that makes excellent encounters more likely. This makes the Analects deeply anti-theoretical in a way that frustrated later systematic philosophers like the Confucian scholastics of the Song dynasty, but resonates with contemporary relational ethics and feminist care ethics. The strongest objection raised by the Mohists in antiquity and by Western universalists is that Ren's inherent partiality, we owe more to parents than to strangers, more to fellow citizens than to distant others, is ethically indefensible. Mozi argued for impartial concern, jian-ai, as the only consistent moral standard. Confucius's best response is embedded in the text. Graded love is not selfishness, but the natural and authentic structure of human caring from which an expanding circle of concern can grow. Artificial impartiality destroys the roots of moral life rather than extending them. 6. Key terms and ideas. Ren, Chinese, Ren, benevolence, humaneness, goodness, the supreme Confucian virtue, etymologically composed of person, in, and tu, are, inherently relational, not a fixed property but an achievement realized in the quality of relationships. Li, Chinese, Li, ritual propriety, the full system of ceremonial norms, behavioral rules, and social forms through which virtue is cultivated and expressed. Not mere etiquette, but the cultural medium of ethical life, the forms through which Ren becomes visible and teachable. Junzi, Chinese, Junzi, the exemplary person, literally, the ruler's son, but redefined by Confucius as a moral rather than hereditary category. The Junzi is the ideal of cultivated human excellence, a model of virtue that others can emulate, not a moral saint, but a mature, self-aware, genuinely caring person. Zhengming, Chinese, Zhenming, rectification of names, the principle that social order requires that words correspond to realities. When rulers do not rule properly, they should not be called rulers. The restoration of proper naming is the first step in moral and political reform. Yi, Chinese, Yi, righteousness or appropriateness, doing what is fitting in a given situation, motivated by the rightness of the action rather than by profit. Distinguished from Li, ritual form, by its motivational character, Yi is the inner orientation that Li expresses. Zhu, Chinese, Xue, learning, but not mere information acquisition. For Confucius, genuine learning, Zhu, involves moral cultivation, self-examination, practice of the rites, and the transformation of character over time. The opening of the Analects celebrates it as the source of genuine joy. 7. Conclusion. The Analects permanently established the vision of the morally cultivated person, not the saint, the genius, or the hero, but the person of sustained ethical attentiveness as the central ideal of Chinese civilization. Its influence on the examination system that shaped Chinese governance for 12 centuries, on Japanese Confucianism, on Korean Neo-Confucianism, and on the contemporary revival of virtue ethics in East Asian philosophical circles is incalculable. The most unresolved question: is Confucian role-based ethics compatible with modern individualism and universal human rights, or does it represent a genuinely different and in some ways more adequate account of moral life? The essential spirit of the Analects, becoming a full human being, is the most important work a person can undertake, and it requires a whole life. Read it, and you will encounter a teacher who believed, with every fiber of his being, that people can become better than they are.